It's a college football playoff showdown between the Miami Hurricanes and Ole Miss Rebels. Here's what Miami has to do to take home that dub.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And when I say take home that dub, I literally mean take it home, because the championship game, if Miami can get there, is in Miami. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On ACC your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He is Kenton Gibbs, former NC State defensive lineman and co-host of Locked On Wolfpack. I am Alex Donno, host of Locked On Canes, and this episode of Locked On ACC is brought to you by Rugiet. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now is the time. Head to rugiet.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. We'll talk ACC transfer portal and just transfer portal in general, because we're going to be joined by Brian Smith from the Portal Podcast in just a second. And there's like thousands of players in the portal right now. We've had some, important exits from the ACC, hopefully some important incoming players. And we'll talk Miami versus Ole Miss. And, Kenton, we got exactly the matchup we thought we would get, right? With Ole Miss beating Georgia, Miami beating Ohio State. We went full chalk on this one.
Well, this is just another symptom of something that I've talked about for quite some time, and that the statistics bear out. The bye weeks hurt these teams because you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds. You don't need rest for 18 to 22. You accumulate rust for that group of people because they're not pros yet. Yes, I know that these contracts are flying and guys are making hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars, but they're still not quite at that level of the NFL where, you've got a 35-year-old left tackle with 3 kids and he needs that rest. He needs to sit down somewhere for a few weeks before his next game. You don't have that in college to that same extent. So objectively speaking, since we've expanded and given buys, the first round bye teams are 1-7. And guess what? Both Georgia and Ohio State had coming into their games against Ole Miss and Miami bye weeks. Yeah. So, very long layoffs between their last time playing football in these games. And I believe that it objectively showed, and I warned everybody of this before the game. Even though I did pick Ohio State, not going to lie and say I didn't, but I said –
How dare you?
I said it was going to be a 3-point game, which was much closer than the spread indicated, and I said it was going to be a close game because – and Miami was going to have a shot to win because they're extremely physical and Ohio State was going to be rusty. Both of those things panned out in major ways.
Yeah, well, let's bring on Brian Smith, who is the host of the Portal Podcast and host of Locked On Seminoles. And I know he's been very invested in these college football playoffs. So, Brian, in this matchup, obviously, teams that are they're engaged. They just played last week. Miami got the win over Ohio State. Ole Miss got the big win over Georgia. Let's start. I mean, is it as simple to say that, Miami needs to make this game a physical one and control the time of possession, and Ole Miss needs to turn this into a track meet?
I think that would be Ole Miss's really, really best shot. I don't think they're going to win a slugfest, especially when you got Trinidad Chambliss. But at the same time, their run game, the one Lacey is legit. Now, can they run the ball against Miami's front seven? That's probably the biggest question of the game, because you're not going to just throw for 450 and win, because when you get down in the red zone and everything condenses, that's rough. They have to be able to run the ball at least somewhat in a traditional fashion, but they want to play tempo even if they're running the ball, and they want to wear out Rueben and Akeem on the edges. So I'm curious to see if they come out throwing or running or if it's balanced. I'm not sure what they'll do, but they need to go with tempo.
Well, I think that when you look at this game and say, is it as simple as rock fight versus track meet? I'd say yes. Objectively speaking, if you get into a track meet, what you're trusting at that point, if you're Ole Miss, is that Carson Beck's going to throw you some Beck balls. You know what that is. In a big game, if you make him throw the ball 40 times, he's going to throw up a couple that just leave you like, well, now, who was the intended receiver there? Who in the green jersey were you targeting with that football? However, if you play a rock fight, now you're trusting that Trinidad Chambliss can be a guy that just takes what the defense gives him time and time over again. And we've seen one of the biggest problems, one of the things that's gotten Ole Miss into trouble multiple times this year is when you force them into that rock fight, Trinidad Chambliss is going to make some hero ball plays where he imagines I can get away from 12 guys and, make a deep pass downfield. And reality doesn't work that way. You're putting yourself, not only exposing yourself to injury, but you're exposing yourself to a great chance for a turnover both through the air or by getting sacked and you're holding the ball like a loaf of bread trying to elude people. So ultimately, I would say that this game is about who can impose their style. Who can impose their style? The other thing that comes out of that, if you have a track meet, Brian just alluded to it, wearing down Bane and Mesidor is easy. If you got those big fellas running every play, they're just, okay, I held my gap. Now I got to run to the line 5 yards down. Okay, we did our job. We got upfield. We forced the incompletion, but we're right back on the line. Okay, they completed 3rd and 6, so now we got to do this all over again for 3 more plays. You're going to have a problem. But if you can create that rock fight, if you can create that, hey, you got to be precise with everything you do, brother. You got to make every possession count. That's when guys like Bane and Mesidor and their impact, it goes through the roof as opposed to a quick, hey, we're everything we do, go, go, go. We want to get in 60 plays this game. We want to get in 80 plays this game. That's a different story.
Yeah, Ole Miss averages over 74 plays per game. So they try to gas out the opposing defensive lines. And that's why, Brian, I think for Miami on the offensive side of the football, it's especially important for, Miami who does not run the type of tempo that Ole Miss runs. In fact, they like to control the time of possession. They're averaging about 66 plays per game, which is ranked in the 90s. Ole Miss is top 11 in plays run per game. Miami's going to want to control the clock with Mark Fletcher. I think to be able to run the football, which statistically you would think Miami should be able to do that. Ole Miss has the 65th rated rushing defense in the country, although I'm sure they brought that average, up a little bit during the playoffs. They had some good moments defending the run against Georgia late. So, they're going to try to replicate that against Miami. But I think if Miami can get their running game going, Brian, it's going to be hard to stop them.
If Miami averages over 4 yards a tote from traditional runs from Mark or anybody else that goes out there, Brown or anybody else, that's when Carson Beck is going to be at his best. He's really accurate on play action. And I saw somebody talk about this the other day. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country when you blitz. In Ole Miss, first half of the season was a drop 8 team. Now they blitz more. So if they're blitzing on first down and they don't get home and get marked for tackles for loss, etc., and you get that quarterback back there is 6th-year senior. I mean, look, that could be a really long day. They have to stop Mark Fletcher in a sense of if he averages 3 yards a carry, you can live with it. If he gets into that 4 and above, Miami's probably going to control the line of scrimmage and Carson Beck will control the game. He's too accurate if you give him easy opportunities.
You want to keep it locked right here. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Miami's defense. Can Rueben, Bane, and Akeem Mesidor get home against Trinidad Chambliss? Can they contain him? You want to keep it locked right here. We got Kenton Gibbs. We got Brian Smith. I'm Alex Donno, and we're only getting started on Locked On ACC. The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on the bets you already feel good about. Ride with the favorite when you think a team controls the matchup, or take a shot on the underdog if you feel an upset coming, or build a parlay around the players and moments you think will decide the game. Then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is the perfect way to celebrate playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long, so visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff boost every single game day. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen. And to the everydayers, make sure you check out the Everydayer Club. You get exclusive Discord servers. You get ad-free episodes. Check it out at lockedonacc.supercast.com or click that link in the show notes below. I am Alex Donno from Locked On Canes. We got Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. Brian Smith from Locked On The Portal and Locked On Seminoles. All right, so fellas, I think the big factor, and Brian, you talked a little bit about what makes Trinidad Chambliss so dangerous. I think Miami's, obviously the defensive line holds a lot of keys here, but you can't overcommit to trying to sack him because he can get outside and extend plays, and he's always looking downfield, Chambliss, and he's super accurate. I think Miami needs to be disciplined, and I think they need to keep him contained.
If they can just pressure him with 4 is the key, but you used a key word, and that's contain. They're going to roll pocket. They'll run some design runs with him and RPOs. It's going to come down to a stat that I heard on another podcast. I didn't believe. I want Donno's opinion on this. Miami's like 110th in the nation in tackling rate. I have a hard time believing that, but I don't know where that came from.
That doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, it doesn't to me either, but whatever the case may be, I figured they were top 40. But if they don't tackle him in space, not just for sacks when they contain, but if they don't push him away from the pocket and make his eyes drop, like Georgia's got a talented defense. Let's be honest, like it's loaded. He had 13 in a row against them. So contain is a really good word, but nobody's been able to do it. So the question now becomes, can you at least get him to throw one up that it goes the other direction? Because Miami's been very good at that. They've got DBs that make plays on the ball, and I think their young corners are making enough plays. So they may not contain him on every play. That's probably not realistic, but just a few home run plays, if you will. Strip sack, an interception, or something like that, that could be the key to the game.
And I absolutely agree with you that the idea that you're going to stop Ole Miss's offense outright, the idea that you're going to hold Trinidad Chambliss to, precious little, I think that that's something that you're really likely not going to get. I mean, their only loss of the season against Georgia earlier, they put up 35 points on them the first time they played. They had that game in control and should have won the first time that they played Georgia. Georgia escaped by the hairs of their chin by some very questionable decisions down the stretch by a man who's now in Baton Rouge. So, ultimately, this is a very high-powered Ole Miss offense. And the idea here, if you're expecting to see more performances like what you saw against Texas A&M and Ohio State, I wouldn't say that you're going to get that level because this is the most explosive offense that they've seen. The big thing here is, can Miami's offensive line lean on them? I think that is going to be more important than the defensive line, because if you talk about one feeding the other, even if Bane and Mesidor have the games of their lives, if you cannot hold a decided advantage in time of possession, if you cannot keep those guys fresh, you're going to have a problem. If Bane and Mesidor are ripping Chambliss a new one, right? Well, how does that help the offensive line? Like, objectively speaking, it doesn't keep them fresher or better or anything like that. The other way will. So Echols and company, they're a heck of a defensive line. However, we've seen Ole Miss has some problems with gap discipline. They've got some problems with tackling themselves, that if you have an efficient and effective run game, I mean, kudos to them for what they did to Georgia. That was probably the best run defense I've seen from Ole Miss, maybe all season. But other than that, by and large, teams have had a lot of success. I believe Florida averaged 6 or 7 yards per carry in their last few games against Power 5 teams. If you take out what they did against Georgia, they're averaging, Smitty said they need 4 per carry. That's about what teams are averaging, if not more, against Ole Miss. So ultimately for me, I know that Mesidor and Bane are the stars of the show, but Big CC, brother, this is about you and your boys. If y'all can lean on them, and, as Cristobal and Saban said, mass kicks, you know what? If that can be the case here, Miami's got a shot. But if Miami cannot run the ball and you're depending on, all right, Beck, you got to throw it 40 times. I'm not saying that they have no shot. That winning that style of game would shock me from Miami. And at that point, crown them the national champion. I know IU is amazing. I know IU is good. But if they can win a shootout with Ole Miss, there's nothing this team can't do.
Yeah, you're right about that. So with that said, Kenton, I'll go to you first. What's your prediction? How's this play out? Who wins?
Yeah, so I think that Ole Miss has done so fantastic in terms of being an ambassador for the SEC. I think that they've done a heck of a job with all the turmoil, and this coach is leaving, that coach is leaving, who's staying, who's going, who's in the portal, who's not, all that type of stuff, and everything that's going on behind the scenes. I think Golden has done a fantastic job of keeping that team together. However, to me, this feels like you've got 5 fingers versus a fist. I think that Ole Miss team is seeing a little bit too much separation and too many things that are coming out from behind the scenes. And I think that cohesion is going to affect them, because right now, Miami is playing with a us versus the world mentality. They've been underdogs for almost every game. And I believe even in this game, I don't believe that they're favored. If they are favored,
Miami is actually favored. Miami's actually favored by 3.5, but they've got everybody hating them because you can make a Disney movie out of Ole Miss if they win this championship. So everybody's rooting for them.
That's my point exactly. Miami has a us versus the world mentality, and it's actually rightfully earned here. Nobody believed in them, and now that people do believe in them, they're like, oh, we want Ole Miss to win. I think that this is going to be one of those power of friendship games, but more important than the power of friendship, we're going to see the power of an offensive line that just leans on guys, play in and play out. And I think that Miami wins a close one in a mix between the two, but a little bit closer to the rock fight. I think we get another 27-17 win from Miami here.
I'm pretty close to what Kenton says. I'm going to echo a lot of what he's bringing up. Again, we both discussed the run game for the Canes. I'm curious to see if Ole Miss brings a guy down in the box early. Like, what do they do? Do they worry about number 10 if that happens? Like, there's a lot of factor. Like Miami's receiver group in general is quality. So how will they handle that? I think that Miami will be able to run the ball a little bit better. And I think Trinidad will be as good or better than any player on the field. But I also think he'll be under a heck of a lot more duress. I'm just being honest. I just think that Miami's offensive line is a gear ahead of Ole Miss's in the pass protection game. I got Miami winning 31-21, and I think they'll have a big turnover that will cement the game.
Yeah, I'm pretty close with you, Brian. I'm going 31-24 Miami. I think it's going to be hard to keep Ole Miss from scoring a few touchdowns, but at the same time, I think Miami's going to have more space because these last couple games, going up against Ohio State's defense and Texas A&M's, Malachi Toney was being blanketed for those 2 games. I think he'll have a little bit more space to make some plays in this one. But as I mentioned, I think winning this game is contingent on being able to run the football with Mark Fletcher, Marty Brown, and Gerard Pringle. I think Miami will be able to do that, and they'll be able to keep enough pressure on Chambliss. So I'm going 31-24 Miami, and it scares me that we have a clean sweep here on the panel for Miami. I feel like I need to dial up Stephen Willis from Locked On Ole Miss and get him in here to pick the Rebels.
Well, listen, the clean sweep of doom and despair never bids well for a team. However, I highly doubt that when we get to the big time national shows, all of them are going to agree with us that Miami's going to win this game. The way people talked about Bama and IU, you would have assumed that Nick Saban and Derrick Henry were walking through that door because they were, oh yeah, this IU team, they played nobody, they've got no shot and all that. So I highly doubt we'll see a bunch of clean sweeps from Miami.
Yeah, this has been a fun playoff, that's for sure. We only have, 3 games total left to go. But when we come back, the transfer portal is always fun. Well, it's either fun or you hate it like poison because, there's thousands of players in the portal. We got to get Brian Smith's take. And also, is the Big Ten going to be able to keep Damon Williams from leaving Washington? They're fighting this tooth and nail. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On ACC. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life. It doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rugiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugiet Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rugiet Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves onto your tongue so it absorbs fast. Folks, you connect with a board-certified doctor online and everything ships discreetly to your door. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Most men are ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet Ready. feel present, feel confident, and feel ready. Thank you for making Locked On ACC your first listen. And for your next listen, make sure you check out our other shows. I also host Locked On Canes. It's pretty obvious what I've been talking about for the past several days. Miami versus Ole Miss. Kenton Gibbs and Grayson Boone co-host Locked On Wolfpack, and Brian Smith hosts Locked On Seminoles and the Portal. I guess let me have your worlds collide here, Brian, because it seems like Florida State has been losing. They've been losing more players in the portal than they've been gaining. Is it just hard to sell Mike Norvell as a lame duck coach right now?
I think the last count that I saw this morning was 33 out the door and 7 in. Now, most people, they're behind because more players are leaving. It catches up at the end, but that's a lot. And the Desir twins, Amari Williams, like that happened a day or so ago, and I'm like, this is about to go, because they lose Big Darrell in the middle. Like their D line is shredded. Their linebacker room was shredded before last season started because it just wasn't any good. And then the secondary is losing a couple key pieces. Offense might be okay, but like Kenton, if you've got any eligibility, they might call you because they may need you to like it's bad up front. So the portal hasn't been kind. And I while you're bringing up a good point, Donno, about the coaching situation, I don't think it's just that. I think it's NIL because a couple guys have come back. I don't think their offers have been where it's supposed to be. Did you hear about the Anthony Calandria thing? It's hilarious.
Yeah, that was received pretty well by Florida State fans.
They left immediately. What does that tell you about how the offers went? So I get it. I knew the Lagway thing wasn't going to work because they were going to want way more than his value. So I didn't even count that. And I'm cool with Ashton Daniels. He's actually a good player, great kid. But like they're trying to give low numbers for guys that have got starting reps. And that's not going to go, especially with D linemen. Ken, are D linemen coveted? Do you think they're coveted in recruiting in the transfer portal? What do you think, man?
Brother, the outside of quarterback, the positions I've been hearing that demand the most are your tackles, your edge rushers, your defensive tackles. Those are the 3 positions that I've been hearing. Hey, these are getting the most. And I'm not going, I don't want to burn any of my sources here, but I've got some pretty good information from all conferences throughout America, and it's unanimous. When you are talking about the big guys, that's who's getting the real money if you're not a quarterback. Receivers getting paid, sure. Corners, safety, linebackers are getting dirt there compared to everybody else. But those big fellas, if Florida State want to call me, let's have a talk. They bringing players that played in the league up in basketball. So give me a call, Norvell. We're committed. It's how we respond, right? And I'm gonna respond to your call, brother. But no, it's the Calandria situation was just to me was one of the biggest black eyes that I have heard about in recent recruiting history. And I'm not joking. I mean, to have a guy hear your number and not just leave the room, leave the visit. Just, all right, that's it, boys. Pull the plug. I'm actually good here. I could not believe it. I could not believe it until I saw multiple sources all confirm that it happened. And I was just like, man, this portal cycle, we've got more kids in the portal than there are FBS scholarships available. There are more former FBS players than there are scholarships available. This is going to get insane. And when you're looking at the ACC level, there are so many unique situations because Florida State is obviously in a terrible situation in terms of the players they want to bat for, where their coach is, where their NIL is. But even for schools like Miami, I mean, you all have some freshmen that have played decent amount of ball that are in the portal at this point.
Yeah, Dante Simpson, that was the only one that surprised me, the defensive tackle, because it looked like he was going to play a lot next year. That was the shocker to me.
And we're all sitting here saying, what's going on? What are you leaving for? You're not going to get a better winner, more opportunity, more money at a next stop. What's going on? So this portal is very interesting. I believed in my school that Hollywood Smothers was going to the NFL. Turns out he's going to Bama where they ain't had a running back that could piss a drop since Jahmyr Gibbs left. So it's a very, very interesting time in terms of what's going on with this transfer portal. But thank God we got Brian Smith to sort it all out, because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, but we need a little bit of clarity in here.
Well, yeah, and I would say, Brian, the most fascinating story in the portal right now is Washington quarterback DeMond Williams. So, I mean, this is controversy. Lawsuits are probably going to come out of this. So, DeMond Williams, 4 days before he, announced he was trying to hit the portal, 4 days before that, he just signed a new NIL deal to remain with Washington. Now I've had to research these contracts because it was the same sort of thing with Xavier Lucas before he ended up at Miami. So the Big Ten schools use these contracts where they try to bind players to revenue sharing agreements, and they're supposedly not allowed to hit the transfer portal. It's in the language of the agreement, but it's so complicated, Brian, because they are not employees of these schools, and these are not contracts to play football. These are marketing deals. So how binding these deals actually are has not really been decided, because a judge hasn't ruled on these one way or another yet, right? But so DeMond Williams decided to hit the portal. There's a lot of smoke that LSU may be the school that, kind of enticed him to hit that transfer portal. But then Washington, they're saying they're not going to let him leave. They're going to force him to play for them next year. How do you think this resolves?
I don't know if resolve is the best word. How about implodes? Yeah. I don't think either party will end very well. Washington's in the worst spot, because while they wait for all this, the portal will come to an end. They need to know who their quarterback is, like every other school. DeMond's got demand everywhere. I mean, he's going to be fine wherever he lands. Miami,
you call him Demand Williams. He should change his name to.
Oh, well done. But I could see him enrolling somewhere, and like you said, he's not contractually obligated to play for the Huskies, but he wouldn't be able to do the deals, NIL or whatever, for whoever he'd have to pay that out, and some booster from some other school would pay it. That's my guess. But I mean, they can't force him to go to school at Washington. So I don't think and I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trying to, and I don't want to be one. I doubt that you can tell a kid that he can't get in the portal. I just don't think that's enforceable. That's my guess. But in one state, they may have a judge that says yes, and another, and that's why law is so complex. It's subjective. So this will not end well. I just hope it ends soon. That's all I ask.
Yeah. The worst part about the DeMond Williams story, and there are many layers of this that are terrible, right? There's the fact that the announcement came while the team was at the celebration of life for a soccer player who passed. That's obviously terrible optics and all that. But even then, I don't think that that's a thing that he planned out, or that he, could avoid, because there's only one window this year and it's extremely short. The biggest thing that I would say is the most damning part of this is LSU was allegedly the school that enticed him in. When he entered his name, Brandon Sorsby was sitting next to Lane Kiffin at a basketball game at LSU.
No, it was Sam Levitt.
Oh, Sam Levitt. I'm sorry. Wrong quarterback. Either way you cut it or slice it, there's another top guy sitting next to the coach that allegedly lured you into the portal. This is what the college sports world has become in 2026. And I'll tell you this, as much as people are upset about all these different clauses and things that are going into these contracts, I'm going to keep saying this until the players understand this and hear me very loudly. You can beg individually or you can bargain collectively. And to me, it seems like it would be in all parties' best interest to sit down and collectively bargain. Hey, this is what these deals should look like. This is what this portal window should look like. This is what these things look. The NCAA ain't going to stop you. It's clear because we got guys that have played in the NBA coming back to play in college basketball. So the NCAA is going to allow it. Just sit down, iron out some terms, and do it that way. So, yeah, fans are going to complain when players leave either way, but you have safeguards and you don't have this situation of very clear tampering happening. And now all of a sudden, this young man who, by all accounts, we don't know anything about him as a person that indicates that he's a terrible human being. But the optics and everything about this just screams. You don't have that well of discernment because you let a coach that had another top portal guy at your position. And mind you, you're not a defensive end, so it's not two of you on the field at once. Right. There's one of you. There's just one. He can't take 5. There's just one. And then on top of that, you do this at a specific timing when a very sensitive thing was happening. It's just a mess.
Yeah, it's an absolute mess. And I appreciate Brian and Kenton helping me sort out this mess. Make sure you follow Kenton Gibbs at TGIF_Kenton and on Locked On Wolfpack. Follow Brian Smith at FBScout_Florida. Check out his other shows, The Portal and Locked On Seminoles. Follow me at Alex Donno and on Locked On Canes. And everyone enjoy the game on Thursday night. We'll talk to you again on another episode of Locked On ACC. We are part of the #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.